What's up, everyone? So I'm having little difficulties with my technology. So I'm currently not live. This podcast that y'all will be listening to will be when I upload. I've been having troubles with it, and I wanted to make sure I got something up for y'all for Saturday game day and everything that's going on today. So with the second annual podcast that I put on Saturday football for college football, I want to go over some of the big matchups that are going on today, some teams to look out for, and just diagnose these games a little bit more than what I did in my previous video this week. So if you go ahead and look at your 12 o'clock slot, you got a couple big games, not really like top ranked games going on, but just key games that these teams got to win. Like Ohio State can't have another game like they did against Northwestern, against Indiana. LSU has to continue to put on a strong showing like they did against Alabama. Traveling to Arkansas this week, they have to put on a strong showing. So you got, I wouldn't say like, you don't have top ranked teams going against each other around 12 o'clock. But you have important games going on where Ohio State has to win, LSU has to win, Illinois has to beat Purdue. But it's an at-home game for Illinois. So those are the three games I kind of want to talk about for the 12 o'clock slot. Going into 3:30, you got primetime game at 3:30 on CBS. You got a primetime game at 3:30 on ABC. ESPN has a 3:30 game. Fox. So there's a lot of big time games going on about 3:30. You have one of the biggest ones is Alabama versus Ole Miss. You got number 9 Alabama versus number 11 Ole Miss at 3:30 on CBS. You then have Clemson versus Louisville at 3:30. Penn State versus Maryland. This is a very important matchup for both teams. I know Michigan and Ohio State's odds of losing and being in that spot of not going to championships is very low. But, Penn State's still a 2-loss team. Both those other teams still have 3 games to go, and anything can happen in college football. Nothing is picture perfect that we want to make it seem. So anything can happen. And then, you just got slated full of games. And then also another big time matchup, this time against another Ranko game. Yeah, number 22 UCF versus number 17 Tulane. This is a very important matchup when you think about non-Power 5 teams and continue to move up the charts, move up the rankings. You got 2 Group of 5 teams, all right? UCF has been very poised to have very good seasons. Tulane, same thing. And then if you look at their standings, the American Atlantic Conference, the AAC, you have Tulane, then Cincy, and then UCF. So this game is very important for, obviously, their conference. Then if you roll down over to the night games at 7 o'clock, this nighttime is going to be one of the best night times to ever watch football, in my opinion, this week. You have Georgia and Mississippi State. Obviously, Georgia should win this. They're 16-point favorites. They are clearly the leaders of the pack. But it's still SEC play. And it's still Georgia having to go on the road. All right. Georgia has to travel to Mississippi State. And road games are not the easiest thing in the world. You have Washington versus Oregon, 25 versus number 6. You have number 4 versus number 18 when it comes to TCU versus Texas. This is a 7:30 game on ABC. You have the Washington-Oregon's a 7 o'clock game on Fox. And then Georgia-Mississippi State's 7 o'clock on ESPN. Right now, let alone, you have 3 very important matchups. Same thing, Kansas Baylor. That's another very important matchup, especially for the Big 12. You have North Carolina, Wake Forest, two extremely talented quarterbacks going into this matchup where North Carolina is the underdog, even though they're ranked higher and have a better record. You have Florida State versus Syracuse. This doesn't really have any implications on it besides their look going into bowl season. Both teams are 6-3. They're both bowl eligible, but winning better games means you get a better bowl. Winning more games, you get a better bowl. So this really helps either team get into a more prestigious bowl. But yeah, outside of that, that's really everything game slated wise that I'm looking towards. Now, go back to the 12 o'clock slot with the LSU Arkansas game. This is going to be one of my picks. Normally I do this on TikTok, but I'm having little issues with everything. So right now you have LSU, Arkansas. LSU has to travel to Arkansas. And this right here, honestly, I didn't really pay attention to how good Jaden Daniels has been playing all year long. All right. When I watched him in the Florida State game, the little bit I watched him, I was like, okay, he's from ASU, and it shows. He's going to have some poise moments. He's going to have some good moments. He's going to have some down moments, and it's going to take a little bit for him to get comfortable. But, I didn't watch his Southern Mississippi State game, but I tuned into the LSU game after watching bits and pieces of how Daniels played against Mississippi State, bits and pieces of how LSU played against Southern. I was just looking on what LSU is doing, and I said, okay, well, the LSU Auburn game should be pretty interesting. And Auburn was able to shut down Daniels. So I was like, maybe Jaden, he still has a lot to learn. Maybe he's just not there yet. Then you watched him get shut down in the Tennessee game. And then all of a sudden, Daniels just erupted against Florida, against Ole Miss, against Alabama. He has went on a very good 3-game stint of playing good football. I'm not going to say he's the best quarterback. He's playing the best quarterback playing the SEC, but I'm not going to say he's playing the worst. Okay, if you just look at the stats alone, you ain't even watched the film. If you just look at the stats alone from what Jaden Daniels put up against Ole Miss, he went 21 for 28, 248, and 2 touchdowns. 23 carries, 121, and 3 touchdowns. Just look at the numbers that he's put up in the Ole Miss game against a very good Ole Miss team. Jaden Daniels versus Alabama. This man went 22 for 32, 182 and 2, 18 carries for 95 yards and 1 touchdown. When you think of a dual threat quarterback, that's what Jaden Daniels has represented all year long. But you got to look a little bit deeper into LSU Arkansas game, more than just stats. Stats tell you a black and white picture of the scenario. And I'm going to be honest, I'm not the biggest expert, so analyzing these teams takes a little time for me. It's not all pretty when I do it, and it's not the easiest thing in the world because I haven't played every position. I played linebacker, and I played defensive end. So analyzing these other positions take a little bit more time for me. But I do try to analyze every bit and piece of these teams. I try my best. But when it comes to Arkansas, the biggest thing that I seen when I was watching Arkansas early on, they was able to exploit, well, let me talk about their offense. Their offense was able to create running lanes for their quarterback and for their running back, Sanders. I kind of came off of Sanders for a little bit when I started talking about these other quarterbacks and some of the other running backs in college football. But I said something very early on in the season. Raheem Sanders is probably one of the best running backs in college football outside of Chase Brown and Blake Corum. He has the yards to prove it. And he damn near has the touchdowns to prove it. He's very good. One thing Arkansas was able to do very early on in the season was create running lanes for Raheem Sanders. And even if there wasn't running lanes, Raheem Sanders was able to create his own. KJ Jefferson, very early on in the season, was able to be very poised, calm, collective, and he was able to make the right throws. Now, something I've seen over the past couple of games or throughout as the season developed, KJ Jefferson's poise would get flustered at times and cause Arkansas he's not the main reason what caused Arkansas to lose games. Defense, obviously, defense loses games too. But when you're able, and this is something that I think LSU could do very, very well. All right. If LSU is able to, this is the biggest thing. If LSU can shut down Raheem Sanders, right, make them a one-dimensional team, take Raheem Sanders out of the conversation, and force KJ to make the throws, I think he can make it. But if you can get to him and cause pressure and shut their running game down, I think KJ is going to have a very tough time. And you see when Raheem Sanders gets taken out of the game, they have had some troubles in the past. If you go all the way back to the Mississippi State game, he wasn't necessarily shut down from the equation, but he wasn't averaging 5 or 6 yards a carry. He was averaging 4. And if you go back to, so making him, even though he is carrying the ball a lot, but if you make him carry 2 yards a carry, even 4 yards a carry. I mean, Raheem Sanders is extremely good. I think Raheem Sanders is averaging like 6 or 7 yards a carry. Yeah, he's averaging like 6.5 yards a carry. Okay, so making him only average 4 in the game or 3 in the game is very good. That means you're stopping him to a point. Now, it's going to be very hard to just completely take Raheem Sanders out of the game. Just like it's going to be really hard to take KJ Jefferson completely out of the game. But that offense really revolves itself around letting KJ run, letting Raheem run. And if you can shut them running lanes down, then you can focus on one level of Arkansas. LSU, on the other hand, I haven't done a whole lot of watching. So it's my analyzation on them is going to be more mainly on their offense more than anything else. I meant their defense than anything else, because what I have seen defensively from LSU is when they can cause pressures, they're phenomenal. They're probably one of the best in the SEC when it comes to defense. When their defense is hitting on full cylinders, they're probably one of the best. Now, yeah, they do let up a lot of yardage, but what I'm talking about is getting to the quarterback. When they're hitting on full cylinders, they might allow like 30, 20, 25 points, 300, 200, 250, whatever yards a game, right? But the biggest point is when Bryce Young was pressured and LSU actually got him, he was like 9 for 20 and an interception. If LSU can cause that type of disruption against Arkansas, who's a lot worse than Alabama, then LSU could have a very good day. If Jalen Daniels has been having a type of season, has the type of game he's had over the past 3 weeks, LSU definitely has this one. So, when it comes to talking about games, LSU versus Arkansas is one of the games I have in my picks. I have LSU winning this one. They have just too much momentum. I think their ability to make plays is a lot better. I'll have LSU. And then my next game be Tennessee, Mississippi, that I'm going to choose. Now, not Mississippi. I'm so sorry. Missouri. Tennessee versus Missouri is the next game that I have on my radar. Now, Missouri, they've done really good things throughout the year. At certain times this year, they've done extremely good things. Like in the Missouri-Georgia game, when Georgia went to Missouri, Missouri was able to shut down Georgia's run game, and that's something that's very important for the Tennessee game. If Missouri's defense can come up to the plate and their defensive line and their front seven can shut down Small and Wright, because really and truly, if you think about it, Tennessee's a two-headed horse in the backfield with Small and Wright. Two extremely elusive backs. Honestly, I feel like they're not opposites, but one's better receiving, one's a little bit better at power. But they're able to shut these two running backs down. Because you got to think, Georgia had Donjay Edwards, Kenny McIntosh, Kendall Milton, Robertson. I mean, they had like 4 or 5 guys that Missouri was able to cool down a little bit, but they ended up getting back going. That's the biggest thing for Missouri. When you keep these guys down, you got to keep them down through 4 quarters. And I just don't think Missouri can do it, but if they can, they have a chance. Tennessee, they're coming off of a really big loss against Georgia, where that defense absolutely demolished them. The DBs played man. I mean, I barely seen any zone in that Georgia-Tennessee game. Them cornerbacks played man. They were hip on hip, playing them, physical, tough, and they were going with them. And that is something Missouri is going to have to try to implicate into this game, is playing man coverage on them Tennessee receivers. Now, it's really hard to do with Hayti. I'm extremely terrible with names. McCoy, Tillman. I mean, these guys, you're going to have to play man-to-man coverage on. You're going to have to play kind of man-to-man on Small and Wright. Missouri, I don't think, has the ability to play man like that. But if they can, Tennessee can have another day where they have trouble. But I think Hendon Hooker, he has too much. They have too much on their shoulders right now to lose it to Missouri. And with the power that Tennessee has and the weakness that Missouri has, I have Tennessee coming out in this one. Now, if we roll over down to 3 o'clock, there's a lot of big-time games. And I know a lot of 12 o'clock games are starting now. It's 12:03. So a lot of 12 o'clock games are going to start about now. When y'all hear this, it's going to be probably about 10, 15 minutes into 12. And I'm extremely sorry about that again, that y'all are getting this so late in the evening or in the afternoon. I'm extremely sorry. I meant to have this up a little bit more, but like I said, I was having trouble. Another thing, at 3:30, there's a couple important games going on. So I already chose 2 out of my 4 that I'm going to cover. I'm only going to choose 1 out of the 3:30 slot that I'm going to make my prediction on, because there's a couple games at 7 o'clock that I like a little bit more. Clemson versus Louisville. This is a game that I'm going to have in my prediction list. And if y'all miss any of this, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on TikTok. I might go live about 3 o'clock, about 30 minutes before the 3 o'clock game, Clemson versus Louisville, and I'll have a little bit more in depth for this. That's what I wanted for the Tennessee-Missouri game, but it didn't happen. Then again, I'm thinking about Alabama, Ole Miss. But I might go live for both of them. Anyways, Clemson versus Louisville. This is one of the games I want to make my prediction on. Now, DJ, I don't care what anyone says. DJ is just not the guy. If Clemson's going to have any opportunity to win this game, I feel like they need to switch it up. Give Cade the opportunity to start, because Will Shipley is this game is going to be on the running attack again. And Clemson's been having this scenario all year long, in my opinion, where their quarterback cannot step up. Their defense is having to overextend what they need to do, and their running back in Will is having to carry the load of the offense. And eventually, like I said, was saying all year long, eventually that's going to break. You can't keep that system and continue to stay undefeated. Eventually, you will break at some point, because without a quarterback, you're not going to have a good team, and they finally broke against Notre Dame. You shut down Will, and DJ can't do what he's supposed to do, you're going to lose the game. So, with Louisville coming onto the scene, now they had a rough start. Louisville did. They had an extremely rough start in the beginning of the season, losing to Syracuse, losing to Florida State, and then losing to Boston College. But over the past 4 weeks, Louisville really flipped the script. Now, I haven't watched a whole lot of Louisville ball, but I think this game is all about. I don't even think this game has anything to do with Louisville's offense, to be honest with you. Because from what I've seen and I've looked, their offense can produce when their defense plays. So, with that being said, if Louisville's defense can single-handedly shut down Will, make DJ uncomfortable, and pick up and make turnovers, and then come off of that and win the ball game, as long as their offense just settles in, plays off their defense, and score, Louisville has a very good opportunity. If that defense cannot cause pressure, they cannot stop the run, then it's going to be a very long day. And I think defensively, they've played better opponents at quarterback. So I feel like Louisville should have an opportunity, because in my opinion, Wake Forest has the better offensive unit than Clemson. And they're able to pick Sam Hartman off 3 times. From what I've seen, they caused 8 turnovers. So that is something to really think about. You know, they was able to cause turnovers against Pitt. They was able to cause turnovers in the Virginia game, in the James Madison game. You know, it's very important to think about. If you can cause turnovers, that's what's going to win your ball games. So if they can do this, Louisville definitely has it. I have Louisville winning this game. My next 3:30 game is the great Alabama versus Ole Miss. And one thing I've seen, that Alabama's offensive line is not that elite. And that is something Ole Miss should exploit. Now, granted, Alabama still has a good offensive line. Ole Miss has a good offensive line. I just think Alabama's offensive line is not as good as it's been in the past. And if Ole Miss can exploit that offensive line, create pressure on Bryce Young, make Bryce Young feel like he has to scramble, then Ole Miss will have a shot. Because if you've watched any games this year, when it comes to the Tennessee game, comes to the LSU game, etc., when those defensive ends or those linebackers was getting past and getting to Bryce Young was making mistakes. Bryce Young was crumbling under pressure. And that's happened a whole lot. If they were able, like even in the Arkansas game before Alabama came off, Arkansas was neck and neck with Alabama. And then, backup came in and they took off. 7 for 13, an interception and for Bryce Young before he got hurt in that game. And obviously he didn't play in the Texas A&M game. But they were still able to get pressure to their backup quarterback. The Tennessee game, same thing, got pressure. LSU got pressure. And they dropped both them games, nearly dropped it to Texas A&M. And if it wasn't for their backup coming in and Arkansas just slipping, they almost would have dropped it to Arkansas. So you have 4 very important games to look at and be like, oh. And then Alabama versus Texas. If you've seen that game, Texas was getting to Bryce Young. And that's the biggest thing that's going to stop Alabama from winning. And if Ole Miss can get there, and their quarterback can play well, Dart can play well, their 2 running backs who have been extremely phenomenal. I mean, Ole Miss has one of probably the best running back core in the entire country. At one point, both these guys had 600 yards together. Jenkins has 1,000. He's a freshman. Evans has 680. I mean, at these 2 guys together, Alabama's going to have a very, very, very tough day. And if it's all on Ole Miss's running game and defense, I have Ole Miss winning this one. I feel like Ole Miss has more momentum. They have too much going into it momentum-wise. I feel like their running game is too strong for Alabama. Alabama struggled a little bit in stopping the run when it came to these other games. And I feel like with Alabama's weakness being exploited as much as it has all season, and it's crumbled on them a couple times already, I think it's come time that they're going to drop another one. And I think they're only going to drop one more this year, and that's my prediction on that. I think Ole Miss is going to come out with the win. If you fall down to the 7 o'clock, I would do Georgia versus Mississippi, but that's too easy. That's too much hot. There's not enough on it. Washington versus Oregon. Now, this is the guy who I had on my Heisman watch in Penix Jr. and the guy who's currently on my Heisman list with Bo Nix. Bo Nix is my number 1 guy in the Heisman. I think Bo Nix is the biggest Heisman candidate all year long. Washington with Penix Jr. Penix Jr. has played very good ball. Don't get me wrong. He's played good. 3,200 yards, 23, 5 interceptions. 23 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's played good ball. Don't confuse me there. Bo Nix, 2,500 yards, 25 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. All right. He's turned the ball over. We know this. But where Bo Nix prospers, this man has almost 500 yards and 13 extra touchdowns on the ground. This man here has over 30 touchdowns on the year so far. 35 touchdowns on the year as of right now. His running game is exceptional. He's been extremely accurate when throwing the football. And I just feel like Oregon's defense has taken steps into the right direction. I mean, if you just watch the Colorado game, the Cal game, they have taken steps in improving and stopping offenses that they didn't have early on in the season. I mean, their defense couldn't stop Georgia. Their defense couldn't stop Washington State. Their defense allowed 27 or 30 to Stanford. They allowed 30 to UCLA. Their defense is struggling a little bit into the season. But now the past 2 weeks, they've really come about. They've stepped up. They've made the opportunities for their offense a little bit more. And this defense really is going to have their day when it comes to Penix Jr. and this Washington offense. And this is really a small sample test of what's to come in the next week versus Utah. But you always got to stay at 1 week at a time. But with the way Bo Nix has been playing, the way Washington has been playing, I feel like this is going to be a shootout like that Washington State game was. I do like Oregon's defense, but like we've seen at points this year, their defense has fallen and slipped. But at the same time, I like Bo Nix a little bit too much, and I have Oregon winning this one. My next game is North Carolina, Wake Forest. So this is, what game is this? Sorry, I'm having terrible memory. This is 1, 2, so this is my 6th game of the night. I'm sorry. I'm having brain memory problems right now. But North Carolina, Wake Forest, my 6th game of the night. I got one more game after this, and after that, those are my game predictions. So my 6th game of the day, you got North Carolina versus Wake Forest. North Carolina's 8-1, Wake Forest 6-3. This is really a test to North Carolina's defense. Sam Hartman is a good quarterback. You've seen at times this year Sam Hartman has tested multiple defenses on if they can stop him. And, Louisville's defense was able to step up. NC State's defense was able to step up. Clemson just got it in overtime. But when this offense is humming, they put up 43 on Boston, 45 on Army, 45 on Clemson, 37 on Liberty, 45 on Vanderbilt, 44 on VMI. This offense, when it hums, it hums. And that's the biggest problem for North Carolina in this game, I think, is their defense allows too much. If you just look at it, they allow 35. They allow 45 to Notre Dame. They allow 20. They only won by 7 to Georgia State early in the season. 61 points to Appalachian State. They allowed, granted, and then they beat Virginia by 3. Granted, they did beat Pitt pretty good. I didn't watch that game. I'm not going to speak on that game, but they beat Pitt pretty good. But their defense, you've seen, they have allowed a lot of yardage and a lot of points. And if you're going to get into a shootout with Wake Forest, then you best come with some good receivers and good quarterback play. And boy, Drake May is honestly going to be the guy that wins this game. Because if this defense can cause Sam Hartman to throw interceptions and cause this team to have turnovers like how Louisville did on them, and how NC State and Louisville really, truly, I think, exploited Wake Forest the most. And if North Carolina can pick up on that and cause these turnovers and get into Sam Hartman's head, North Carolina has a really good shot at winning this game. Now, North Carolina are underdogs in this one, and Drake May, I think, is very disrespected on. I have Drake May and North Carolina Tar Heels winning this one. Now, a little reminder, I will go over the games I predicted before I end this video. And my last game of the day is TCU versus Texas. TCU is 9-0, Texas is 6-3. When this team is humming, this team is humming. And I think with Max Dungum and how he's been playing offensively, they're going to be too much for Texas's defense. Even though I know Texas is favorites, TCU's are underdogs. Max Dungum, how their running game's been playing, I don't think Texas is going to be able to contain it, and I think TCU is going to come out with this win. Now, to recap a little bit, I have LSU over Arkansas. I have Tennessee over Missouri. Ole Miss over Alabama. I then have Louisville over Clemson. I have Oregon over Washington. And, so I have North Carolina over Wake Forest with TCU over Texas. But those are my games that I have going for this week. And I will go up live at 3 o'clock for the LSU, for the Alabama Ole Miss game and the Louisville Clemson. I'll then go live at 6:30 for the Oregon, TCU, and North Carolina game. But like always, I want y'all to check out my social media on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. It's all at Sports Culture Podcast. And subscribe. Thanks.